Can you let me know when we're live, please?
We are now live.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I call to order our February 3rd Public Works and Utilities Committee meeting. It is 5:02. Could I please get a roll call?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Counselor Castro.
Presente.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Counselor Lee Garcia.
Excused,
Counselor Romero Worth.
running late.
And Chair Chavez.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See none, motion passes. Next is approval of the consent agenda. Last I heard, there were no items pulled. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, actually, one item was pulled, and it was item number B. Item 7B was pulled.
So item 7B was pulled. Are there any other items that need to be pulled by committee? Could I get a motion?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Counselor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Castro.
Yes.
Counselor Chavez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience today that would like to come up and speak? I see no individuals, so we will move on to our next item, which is presentations. We do have a presentation today, update on ADA transition plans, and Daniel Lopez Jr., our Equity and ADA Manager, will be here to present. I turn it over to you, Mr. Lopez.
Madam Chair and committee members. Can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Daniel Lopez.
Daniel, you have to speak right into the mic or else people on YouTube won't be able to hear you.
Okay,
Thank you.
there we go. Today, I'm going to present the updates of what we've been working on for compliance. So let me go to the next slide. Department of Justice has established the priorities that must be in place. The order of events on how to make something accessible a facility. This is specifically related to facilities. Priority 1 is the approach and entrance of a facility. The next priority 2 is the goods and services, of accessing those goods and services, whether it be physically or an alternative means if you can't do it with the barriers that exist. Next is the access to the public restrooms. And then the fourth one would be access to public items. Any other components that are in the facilities. Now, what's required for compliance is that we remove architectural barriers. That's essential that we do that. Then also make services, programs, and activities accessible in themselves as you deliver those services so that a person can participate in a manner that is not less than equal. In addition, communication. This is language. Those who have hearing impairments, hard of hearing, visually impaired as well. That's what's required. Now, the accomplishments that Santa Fe has already made as thus far as they've developed a transition plan as required. They accomplished that in 2011, the original transition plan. They also conducted a self-evaluation of programs and activities in 2011. Furthermore, they conducted another public right-of-way assessment and study and developed a transition plan of that in 2017. As required, they established a grievance procedure so that if a person with a disability has experienced discrimination, they have a methodology to come forward and submit a grievance so that a solution can be reached. Ongoing activities at this point, we're updating, as I said, the transition plan. We're looking at the previous transition plan, what the deficiencies were, and going out and doing assessment and assessing if those items were removed or not, or if the facility has been closed or changed in another way. Also, we're conducting recently with new legislation on ADA audit of digital compliance, accessibility, websites, social media, and things of that nature for access to public records, public communication, whether it be governing body as well, your meetings and committee meetings. Another thing we're looking at to enhance communication is we're developing a language access plan. That's going to also couple with the requirements of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, specifically Title VI, where it comes to other languages. That's been brought to our attention that people who speak Spanish are asking for access to communication from their government in all facets. And all, as you know, sign language is a language, Braille is a language, captions are language as well. And this is a large undertaking, and a lot of cities are also doing this. So let me get to the reports. I've brought today a few samples of reports that you can, I want to see if you can see them. I will start with City Hall. Understand that these are drafts. So they're a work in progress, but I wanted you to get an idea of what a plan is going to look like. As I approach a building, I start from the site, from exterior, public right of ways, parking, and I work my way inward to the entrances, first level floors, and so forth. Gain access to all those components. And then that way we see. This is what a table of contents looked like. As you can see, we have the exterior site, and in this building, the basement level, first floor, and then we have the second floor. And as you can tell, I identify the elements with an E, like exteriors, finding number one. If there's an issue with something exterior, that's how it's finding. Basement, same thing. Main corridor is B1. I found something wrong. So, and so this is what we do. Identify the finding. We document what the barrier was. We provide possible a solution, and then we go forward with that for the next period. These are samples of what we've done, what we've looked at. And so these are exterior portraits. I'm going too fast, or you want me to slow down, let me know. Have other plans I want you to see so you can see where we're. First flat room, you've been down in the basement. Some things aren't accessible. You have accessible bathrooms. Those other floors that are signage, like in this area, is required to be at a certain height. We identify the requirements that address that. So let me go ahead and go to the next one. The next one. And do that for main library. This one was spec. And so, again, the same format that we identified that. What I found in this particular building was the front facade, the front portion of the library. You're aware of the bricks being uneven. That is significantly getting access, so it affects the priority one level of compliance, access and entry into the facility. Prior to that, I'm going to go to the end of this particular report, show you the parking situation. Prior to this situation, the parking was pretty much non-existent, hadn't been in place. We were able to get parking enforcement to come in and stripe, and that worked out. And we also put in some real stuff. That was in the middle of the night where we were doing that kind of work. And now, as you can see, very accessible. Someone can park safely, get out of their vehicle without falling over something and get into the library. So the entry on one point is accessible, but on the other side, it needs improvement. So that needs to be rest down the road. Interior wise, the library, for the most part, had done significant work to make its services accessible with limited assistance. And that I was very much impressed with. There are going to be some other priority issues, drinking fountains that are too high. Some of the bathrooms need some improvements, and door handles need to be changed out. And these are smaller items that can be accomplished down the road. So let me go to next. So now you've seen two similar type buildings. Let me go to Water Street parking. That one. That one, you can tell by the layout how wide. In the front portion, you have the path of travel. There it was irregular. Someone actually fell. And shortly after that, it was improved upon. It's now more. But the condition of the lot needs significant. Like if, for example, we have this access point that is accessible. But in my finding, I state that it leads to no area use. And it's confusing. I mean, if someone goes out there, they're actually somewhere. So the layout in my observation needs to be revisited, maybe redistributed as far as accessible features, accessible parking, and see how traffic flow can be made safer. So when people exit, that's something that we do. As you can tell, these are the accessible parking spaces. Because they're so faded, they're almost unidentifiable. They need to be redone. Signage is missing. Needs to be put in. So it's not at the fault of the individuals who park there that are not disabled, because it's a little confusing for them. So that needs to be improved. And also, if you can see, the surface has degraded to a point where maybe it needs to be resurfaced. And that's an opportunity to improve the overall situation. Now, this is an entrance from the hotel port side, going to parking lot. When you get to the other side, there's no curb ramp. It's an elevated area, so you just drop off. So someone who's maybe blind or in a wheelchair who didn't know that at night might fall and hurt themselves. So we can enhance that to be accessible. But also that area serves the hotel for its parking. That hasn't been defined of what percentage of those need to be accessible. That needs to be addressed. So that's all. It's really. The next. Okay. Now, a recent one that we're working with that I kind of say is a success with working with another governmental entity. This is at the Capitol. Of course, we control the meter parking spaces. And we also have public right-of-way enforcement statutes that everyone has to comply with. Owners of properties are required to maintain the public right-of-way in front of their property line. In this case, the parking spaces, we erected the portions of the metered parking for our side, but we asked that the state government put in the curb ramp because it's on their property line area. So they're going to be doing that shortly when the weather permits. But we've done our part, and so that we've enhanced parking. See, if you look, the sidewalk doesn't have a way of access in it. We've restriped this, made it correct, and today it meets the standards. Signage and curb ramp is going to be installed by the state, and that's basically how we work with everyone who's a property owner, and it's going to be part of that metered parking area. Currently, we have approximately 90 accessible spaces of metered parking. In the future, my goal is to assess each of those accessible parking spaces and factor in ice built up and also, is it serving the overall environment at an optimal level? Do we have too many in one place? Do we have not enough in another? And so with the parking enforcement team, we'll work with them to see how we best can improve the parking situation for everyone. So Branch Library. This one's a real nice one. South Branch Library. The issue predominantly was, of course, parking. It needs to be restriped. The path of travel from parking to the main entrance, again, was brick, a consistent material that's causing problems when used. So our recommendation, this was significant enough to where so many people were tripping and falling. Those with ambulatory issues were just falling. So we recommended that a 5-foot wide path of travel be installed made of concrete. That's our recommendation. And this is from the same main entrance going to the corner to access maybe a bus route. It's a long area to fix, but our primary recommendation is to fix from parking to the main entrance, because there's an alternative entrance on the side street towards the teen center. Of course, there's minor adjustments that need to be made with the heights of railing and also edge protection for someone who's coming down a ramp. The slopes comply; they do meet the requirements. This is the other entrance going towards this teen center, coming towards this way. Outside of that, some adjustments have to be made. Nothing major. Heights, signage, we are lacking some signage. With that's not a higher priority, but it is a need nonetheless. And signage was misplaced on the wrong side. It should have been on the latch side instead of the hinge side, but that can be easily remedied by just moving the sign. So that's not going to be a high cost. Signage was missing, so let's add signage. And of course, it was installed incorrectly. It was installed lower. And so that just needs to be brought up to height. But in general, I've identified the deficiencies. What I want to get to on this particular location is that the interior was impressive. The availability of accessing books, services was in place. It is accessible. So that's something we can say is a great thing, because the exterior, once we install the proper path of travel, this building is going to be one of the best and the most accessible. That's good news to have. The next one, I'm going to touch on, well, Sandoval. That one is a big work in progress. There was no van accessible parking space. Hang on, let me see if I can. There was no van accessible parking space. In fact, on the opposite side, the exit side, there was a sign that said, there is no van accessible parking, and it's required. I've talked to parking enforcement. They are planning to restripe the entire area, and they're going to install 12 accessible parking spaces, 3 of them of which will be van accessible. So overall, now I've identified, as you come from the plaza going towards of course, the site surrounding the building, these are the elements that are not accessible. Trip hazard, just so there's some abrupt, some slope issues. And when I measure, I will give a specific measurement of what the conditions are. So that way you can see the picture, see for yourself, and it will be compliant. Very exact on that. As you can see, it narrows and it's irregular with the brick again. This is the historic district area, so discussions about that might need to take place and how can we enhance accessibility? I mean, from the parking garages and lots to the plaza. That's something to think about for our tourists and the community, especially those with disabilities, as we want to have them feel safe and welcome. And these are required standards that need to be looked at. Look at like if you look at the brick, it has dropped due to water and ice over time. And so we have to reconsider the use of that brick. See, this is what the parking looked like. It was too small, irregular. But that's, and then the path to go in front of the vehicle to leave the garage is also concerned, but now will be addressed. We walked aside with the person who was going to correct it. And they understood our need. We'll go to the next one. This is of course the the Chavez Community Center. Parking again needs to be addressed. It's over time. Maintenance needs to be maintained. Its accessible features need to be maintained. The heights of signs are too low. They're less than 60 inches. Or to be at minimum 60 inches. If they're not in a path of travel, my strong recommendation is always, rather than think about the height at being 60 inches, just to put them at 80 inches below the bottom of the sign. So that way, one, it serves two purposes. One, you could see it when you're driving, you know where the accessible parking is at from when you're driving to the lot. Two, in the event that it may be in a path of travel of someone who's blind, they won't hit their face on the bottom edge of the sign and hurt themselves. So that's why I was recommending 80 inches from the bottom of the sign. And signage. Here the wheel stops have moved, so someone's going to encroach onto the sidewalk, making it difficult for someone to get out of the vehicle and come into the building. And I strongly recommend that we never allow someone with a disability exit their car and go behind another car, because usually they're at a lower height, and if someone's backing up, they can inadvertently run over them. And that's why these paths of travel maintain and accessible, and wheel stops prevent people from encroaching, reducing their access. Sign, it still would recommend 80 inches, so that way it can be seen from the street. And that's just parking. Now here we have just basic maintenance that needs continued, so that the features of accessibility are not lost. Here is the parking space going to the therapy pool, which is predominantly those with ambulatory issues. The overall layout needs to be redone and made to be in compliance. And any debris needs to be removed so that someone doesn't trip or fall and further injure themselves when they're trying to get basic items that were identified from the previous inspections. There's just some adjustments that it can be made to be a little better. You can fur out the wall to have the grip a little bit better for stairwells. And here we go with, oh yeah, the pressure of the doors exceeded 5 pounds of pressure. That needs to be 5 pounds of pressure for all interior doors. Exterior doors are exempt from that requirement. In the rink area, you have the upper deck where people with disabilities can sit. But I'm recommending that we identify the accessible seating with signage and companion seating so that it's readily available and not taken by someone who wants to put a table or obstruction and reduce the number of available seating possibilities. Because this is stadium design, so it's called cluster seating. I'm not going to have it at the bottom because it's just not designed that way, and it precedes ADA. Okay. And here we have some older restrooms and dressing rooms. We had some minor signage issues. So some stairs, of course, the railing needs to be adjusted. And again, signage. And here, access going into the racquetball area was available. I just wanted to show that it was, and someone with a disability wants to play, they can do that. Again, signage to egress in the event of a fire. And railing, it needs to be looked at again. There we go. I mean, we have the chair that allows people with disabilities to access the water. Above this chair, the roof is falling in. And so there's cones around there. And so it's difficult for people to utilize that. Of course, the slopes, I wanted to demonstrate that they did meet the slopes. And the shower, this was one of the better examples that someone can transfer onto the bench and use shower facilities with assistance. And the entry was wide enough and people can get in and out of the facility. Staff is usually very helpful with everyone. So that's also another alternative means of providing accessibility. We definitely do want to remove barriers as soon as we can. And of course, this is once was the daycare area. It's at the moment not being utilized, but for the most part, it meets the requirements. There's the bathroom within that daycare area, and it complies. And this is the patio. It's not really being utilized, but one can get in there and out. And of course, signage, heights, and things of that nature. Some need adjustments. And here we have the track area is very well maintained and it's accessible. Now, the upper deck, there is an elevator, but it's not operational. But is that area required to be accessible? You have equivalent facilitation of equipment at the lower level, so not a high priority to make it more accessible up there, because I identified that you had the same equipment up there and you had downstairs. So equal treatment was being provided. And see, that's from the upper deck. And again, here's the seating, and there's companion seating, but we need to identify it, designate it so that it's understood it's for people with disabilities. Of course, there's the broken out. Really. This is the upper deck, and they had the same equipment. And there we go. Now,
Yeah, I think, Daniel, that makes a really good representation of your work on the transition plan. Thank
Yes,
you so much.
I mean, we're okay. Well, if you have any questions, is there anything if there's to know?
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. And I just want to make sure that those reports are accessible to community members. Are they public?
These records are drafts at this moment. In the future, as we complete them, they will be required to be reviewed and comment is required to be given so that we can adopt them as a final finding. And then we can move forward to solutions.
All right, and so can I get a timeline just in regards to when they'd be made available to the public?
We're looking at what about, I want to say about 8 months, we should be finished with our assessments of the facilities. That's my goal. I'm the individual that's going out making the assessments. We have approximately 150 facilities. And and each of them are different in size and different in type. And we'll put that together and along with assistance of staff, we'll finalize their versions that are going to be available to the public. So best guess estimate for the public to view and have comment would be a year from now. Would you agree?
Yeah, this is a big piece of work. I don't know if the council remembers the old transition plan. It's in a binder this big, and we're really excited that Daniel has employed software now that he actually can take the pictures and it makes these nice reports. We have been talking back and forth about the risks and benefits of releasing draft reports, and these are, pretty strong, clear, clean, I think, reports. So we'll continue to talk about that. There is compliance issues for the city with the, any inaccessible features. So we'll want to, take the right process of compliance with that, with respect to that. But we'll talk more about it and bring more
Give you a
information to you.
Of the past, the city in the past spent over $500,000 on the last study. It had a team of various people going out and doing the inspections. That took them about a year and a half to put together. Roughly the same number of facilities. I'm doing it, but I have the level of experience of going into a facility, assessing it quickly. I pretty much know what I'm looking for. And so I'm trying to do this a little bit faster.
I appreciate your work, Mr. Lopez, and I just feel like this information is valuable to the public.
Yes.
I think and I'm sorry I'm gonna be turning it over to committee, but I think if we're out of compliance and we're working on it, that's something that needs to be transparent to our community
Yes.
members. So I don't want things released after the fact. I think that it's great that we acknowledge and we're working on it, but I don't want us to wait to release information until we fixed a problem. If the problem is present and pending a solution, then I want the community members to know that. So I want to emphasize that. I think that's a important thing. I think it's very powerful as a city when we see that there's issues and we're acknowledging them.
Yes.
Because acknowledgement means solutions. And so I just want to stress that I recommend that we release information prior to solution, because there's a lot of power that comes from having a plan for solution, and we could explain that when we get there. Okay?
Yes. And
Just to clarify just one thing, we don't mean that it's a year to get to the solutions. We mean it's actually just a year to document the conditions that in a fully compliant way. And so this is a draft, an early draft, but I have been working with Daniel about, we're going to bring this to the Mayor's Committee on Disability as
Yes.
well, to let them know that we are actually deeply engaged in this. We're not waiting to release it till we fix the problems, that's for sure. However, we are fixing problems as we go, as Daniel has mentioned, but we're waiting to be in a state of strength for the city to publish our transition plan.
That's great. Thank you.
yes, and the committee is involved. They bring forth the priorities and the facilities that they think need to be looked at first. And their input is valuable. We will be communicating these findings at their next meeting. They've asked us to do that. We working closely with everyone on that committee. There's other things that have been corrected outside of physical compliance. Program access issues have been addressed due to the committees bringing forward their concerns. And so we've been addressing those items. So as far as the public being aware of some of the things that are being available to us or bringing forth their concerns, that is continuous. And we're just trying to develop a final, more updated transition plan so that we can refer back to it. And what makes this document a little better than the previous document, that it's a live document. As we change items that become accessible, we go in, we document that it was fixed on this date, and then we remove it. So it progressively gets less and less components that are out of compliance over time. So some of the things have been taken care of, and they're going to continue in that way. It's a work in progress, and it's a live document. So that's the benefit that we have today with the new technology.
It's amazing. And I want to just emphasize my gratefulness to you, Mr. Lopez, in addressing this issue. And I want to encourage the work to be public, that like the problems that have been identified and resolved, that also be public, because I want the community to see your great work and the work of our city staff in addressing issues, because that's powerful. You know, it's a lot, it's a huge undertaking, and the fact that you're taking it on and you're making progress is huge. So please make sure, I know, and you probably didn't mean it this way, but you're like, as we're addressing things, things are being removed, keep them on there and just say the good work that you're doing, because you and our city staff deserve credit for that, okay? And I will turn it over for questions. I'm so sorry that I started with that. Are there any questions from our committee members? Go ahead. Oh,
Sorry, I'll be very quick. I just wanted to know if the restriping is being done by our new equipment, or is our department doing that work, or are we contracting out?
Contract that out.
Madam Chair, Councilor Castro, actually, our parking division does its own striping. So a lot of that is done by them for the parking spaces. Our equipment that we have for the road striping is completely different capability for long stripes. But our parking division does a lot of our street parking.
In-house?
That's correct.
By hand, I would.
That's correct, with stencils and brushes and, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And is there any way that we could possibly, once we do get that information, sort of prioritize? I'm hearing things that are really sort of important, like the roof this chair not being accessible because the roof has cones around it, right? I'm seeing things like we can't use the Water Street parking lot in a safe way. Are there ways that we could maybe rank these in terms of priorities and safety?
Yes, Director Wheeler and I have discussed this. Plans to put it forward for correction is in progress. We're looking for the funding associated with making these corrections. And what I have to say also is this. There are several people that are key components to our success, and that is going to be Chair Gish from the Mayor's Committee on Disabilities. She has been structured in bringing forth the priorities that the community has. And most importantly, commitment that I have with Director Wheeler on pushing for us to go forward and faster. And she has been committed. She's been persistent and very responsive to the issues that are of higher priority. So I want to just say that it's been good working with a director who cares about what needs to be accomplished. And as you know, we have limited resources and things are going in that direction.
If I could add to that too, Madam Chair, I actually did want to report on, Daniel mentioned it. We have been fixing easy things as we go, right? So that's one of the things. So it may not be the highest priority thing, but it's an easy thing. So we've been, and it is the highest priority thing because as you saw, priority one is access to the facility itself. So that means from a parking spot or from the bus stop. So if that route of accessibility, if that route of arrival is accessible, that's key. So boy, we've been on the parking ones. Daniel's met out there with the parking team a whole bunch, with the facilities team. We've, so there's that. The main library parking lots have been fixed. The state parking space is getting fixed, as you saw. The Water Street lot has been restriped and moved around a little bit. We've worked on parking spaces around the plaza, got them out of the shade so they aren't frozen. We're also doing the Sandoval Garage refurbishment for that. So that money was funded at the beginning of the fiscal year. Obviously, we'll bake in a lot of the changes that we need from this. So that is a dual opportunity. Southside Library we saw as a really big opportunity because it's such a beautifully accessible facility, but we need to make that entranceway. You'll be seeing a one-time funding request coming forward. For that, we have identified as something to move quickly on. Also, the governing body allocated $1 million towards sidewalk repairs. And our project that we're working on with that is we're mapping out all the requests. We're finding out where those are also correlated to access to public facilities, and we'll be prioritizing those. So it's a little bit about like synergies, ease of corrections, also where we're making investments. It will always cover the ADA things. There's already over 100 findings. So, prioritizing everyone, we're thinking of it a little bit more holistically, like Southside Library, really great accessible facility. Make sure it goes all the way from the parking lot and the bus stops to the front door. So I think we're looking at it with the Mayor's Committee on Disability, and all the investments that we're making and making sure that we address whatever we can as soon as we can.
Vic, thank you, and I'll follow up, but great work. I'll see the floor.
And Counselor, is it okay since I have to leave if I say my spiel?
Absolutely.
Since I'll be turning it over to you as chair. I just really want to emphasize that language is the biggest priority. If we don't have language accessibility, then we don't have people coming to facilities. And I can't stress that enough. If we have individuals in our community that know that we can communicate with them, they're not going to visit our facilities. And I feel like we have huge work to do with that, being that we have known that we are a community that has, two majority languages, which is Spanish and English, and we still have not met the needs of our residents that speak Spanish is a huge issue for me. And it makes them feel unwelcome. And I think that if we make especially like our meetings and everything that we say is public, accessible to all community members, then our facilities and our resources and our services will then be accessible. So I have to leave because I have to go hand out hoodies to my son's basketball team. But I just wanted to really emphasize that point. Communication is key. If individuals think that they're going to show up somewhere where they won't be able to communicate their needs and their wants or receive the same customer service as anyone else, they're not going to come. And as long as we don't have language accessibility, we are limiting our city facilities to the minority in our population, and I don't think that's okay. So I just want to really push forward the fact that if there's anything on the list of to-dos that should be put front, it is communication accessibility. And can I just get where we're at with that perhaps, and I know it's expensive.
Yes,
I know it's expensive, but I also know that it will be meaningful in the fact that we're going to get more individuals coming to our facilities, paying the fees. It'll pay off, but it makes me very sad that language barrier is making our community members uncomfortable with engaging with our city. That's unacceptable.
Yes, the foundation of democracy is the ability to communicate, to come forth with your grievances towards your government. That includes people with disabilities, includes people with different languages. And in this chamber, we had a loop system for those with hearing impairments. I discovered it wasn't connected, so we worked to get it connected, and now it works. We spent so much money on it, now it works. We have 2 portable systems so that if we have an emergency management situation, we can go out in the field with a portable system for those with hearing impairments. We're working, we developed a scope of work to get a consultant on board so that we can discuss how we're going to make governing body meetings accessible to those who are deaf and hard of hearing, those with language, and so that we can broadcast it online, on the television waves, cable system, and in live. So that's the coordination we're working towards. We've identified the expenses significant, but with proper budgeting, I think we can accomplish it as a standard practice. But we must first start with the living room of the community, and this is council's chambers. This, that people can come forth and bring their grievances and concerns and celebrations to the governing body.
Absolutely. And I feel like as a city, we really need a toolbox of language resources because, our job as city officials is to go out into the public and connect to our constituents. And a lot of us have town halls, or a lot of us have community events of some sort. And we really should be
Yes.
able to, pull in resources from the city to come along with us so that those language resources are there so that all of our community members are hearing what we have to say, and that's not present right now. And so some of us have really great intentions and great messages to share with our community, but because as a city, we're lacking in language resources, a lot of our community members don't hear that. So I absolutely think it needs to start in here, but I also think that we need to have a toolbox where, as city officials that represent Santa Fe, if we're like, we're going to go out there and we're going to talk about public safety, we're going to go talk that those language resources should be easily accessible to us so that our message is easily accessible to our community members.
Yes, my vision,
If I could, excuse me, I know that you don't have, Madam Chair, I just wanted to let you know that we actually do have a toolkit. Our ENNs always have Spanish translators and all Spanish translated material, and tomorrow night's Midtown ENN will be a really good example of that. Be happy to provide you with some of the details of that, because you're exactly right. Yeah, Councilor Castro.
Sorry, point of clarification. We also have a contract, and this is part of the lack of communication we have between departments sometimes. We have a contract through economic development with interpreters for our events as a city. And so we can reach out to Joanna Nielsen, or Director Nielsen, I apologize, to schedule any events for interpretation.
That's awesome. That's great to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your focus on language. The other thing we're really working on is to get translated captions. It's really, really, really important. Thank you, Councilor Castro.
Sorry, yeah, just one more point on that. And I really thank you for the captions. We do have a really challenging situation around literacy in our state and in our city. And so that's why I'm really trying to focus on also having voiceover.
yes, that's also included in our scope of work, that we need someone to look at how can we have someone in the room, with
Mm.
headphones, loop system, so that people can understand live the question and then also present their answer, and that one-to-one communication can transpire. Other cities have done that, and we can do that.
That's perfect. Yeah, because I really, and I'm going to say this before I leave, access to communication and our message as a city is where accessibility starts. So individuals have no idea what we provide as a city if they can't hear what we have to say.
That was a number one priority when I was working with FEMA,
Mhm.
as we communicate with various languages. We used iPads to get access our interpreters from all over the country to communicate with those individuals if we didn't understand that specific language.
And if we could get to that place as a city and just, I feel like there's a lot of issues when we read the reports that we have to address. But I think if we put anything at the beginning, it's going to be communication.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for your work and your dedication, and I could just tell your passion in this, and I'm so glad you're where you're at. I'm very grateful for you. I appreciate your work, and I have to leave, so I'm going to turn it over to Counselor Marroworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple questions, and thank you, Mr. Lopez, for being here tonight. And I agree. I know you're passionate about this work, and it shows every time you're in front of us. So thank you. And I want to thank you also for the library parking here downtown. I did have some people reach out to me about the condition of that. And from the pictures, it looks like it's much improved. So very exciting. Thank you. Are you, and I came in a little bit after your presentation started. Are you developing a cost estimate in association with each of these assessments that will kind of tally up
Yes,
what the overall price tag is for fixing everything, and so that we can start to figure out how we go
Budgeting.
about,
Mhm.
kind of approaching what I'm sure is not a small price tag.
our steps to that end is this, we're identifying the barriers. And like I said, we were going to go over those findings with staff and with Director Wheeler so that we can somehow be able to attach an approximate cost of those findings so that when we present it to the public, that they're aware of that end cost so that council and the public can define where's the next step to go as far as budgeting. We will tell you what the bad news is in a sense, and then through discussion and dialogue, we'll find out what the best approach will be from mayor and council for budgeting each year, and how long will that take? If it's going to be a bond election, or if it's going to be through general funds or other means, grants.
Right. And some of that'll be too, in terms of prioritizing things that are a higher level and need to happen more quickly besides the immediate things you're able to do now. So I think, yeah, it's just an important way to kind of chip away at the
An
problem.
example of what can be done, in my previous city, we, in my hometown of El Paso, we established a line item of 500,000, and we had people from the community bring forward what they thought was a priority of city facilities that needed to be improved. And then each year we would address those higher priorities every year. And an annual budget of 500,000 was established for that approach. That was one approach. Nonetheless, as we improved our facilities at that time, we would incorporate compliance. Anytime we touch a park, anytime we touch a building and we're enhancing or building something new, we would incorporate compliance in that. And that can be done here as well.
Right. Just one other question. How do you deal, and what made me think of this is the downtown library and the brick, which I'm sure has a historic value to it. How do you resolve or work with sort of the historic value and obviously the need, if it's not very helpful if people can't access the building? And you said it was accessible on one side, but on that other side, not so much because of the brick. And I'm sure that's true. Having been down there, it's very uneven, and just for even able-bodied people is tricky. So I'm just curious what happens in those instances.
Madam Chair, you may remember that we had a project that has repaired a bunch of the brick sidewalks around City Hall about 3 or 4 years ago from the GRT bond.
Okay.
And we can continue to do that. It's not impossible to just bring up the bricks, shave down any roots that are there, relay the sand and put the bricks down, so that we do refurbishment of the brick sidewalk, because it really is a signature look for Santa Fe. It's not ideal from how it performs from a salt perspective or wear perspective, but it really does have a lovely aesthetic, and we try to maintain that.
Just curious what happens there. Again, thank you for the work. My son, when he was 10, broke his leg, and he was in 5th grade, I think, and we at Wood Gormley, and we spent some time wheeling him around to all his various activities that he could do in a wheelchair, and it does give you a totally different perspective of the city when you have that look. So I know how important this work is. I also agree with the language access. I know we've made some strides there, and there's more to do. So again, thank you for the work. Very important. Really appreciate it. Other questions? Counselor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Lopez, for all the heavy lift of work that went into these multiple reports. I definitely want us to focus on what we're doing well. I mean, as you mentioned, more importantly, it's where we're not doing well, because it's my understanding there are federal laws requiring us to be in compliance, and if we're not in compliance, we face some hefty fines. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yes, enforcement can be aggressive. And yes, that's why the efforts that we're making at this moment to updating our transition plan, demonstrates good faith. And by maintaining that good faith effort, we remain in compliance. And as we go forward and fast as we can, that will enhance the accessibility, and the community will also see that we're doing our part. It's a large endeavor. I mean, I am a man of, I'm a division of one. We've talked about contracting somebody to come and do the actual inspections if I assume other responsibilities. But I'm the type of person that likes to be involved and look at things quickly so we can get it done faster, because I have a lot of experience in coming to solutions in different scenarios, different types of facilities. So I'm moving as fast as we can, and we will continue making those strides forward.
Great. Well, thank you for your dedication on that. And I look at this as the investment that's needed, and it's way past due. And maybe it's, the fine aspect that gets us moving along quicker, because I'd rather us have an accessible city than a city that's out of compliance and we're receiving fines. Lastly, I just want to make sure, as you're doing these analysis, and you said you rattled off a number of city facilities, and I want to make sure that you're also doing some evaluation of our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure.
Definitely. That's working with MPO, Complete Streets. We're looking at how we can enhance transit along those areas to combine it together and impact accessibility, not just for people with disabilities, but all people, so that we have a better product for us.
Right, because I mean, there are certain public spaces such as the plaza, for example, it's not a
Yes.
facility, but we need to ensure that it's 100% accessible to
safe.
anybody. So, and just a reminder, the resolution we passed last year that guides us to allocate appropriate money. So if that helps you to move along the lines that El Paso did, where there was $500,000 for the needs of
Mhm.
the infrastructure update to ensure a more accessible city of Santa Fe. Sorry, Director Wheeler, but I'm going to say request it, because we need to ensure we're moving towards an accessible future. So thank you, Mr. Lopez. Thank you, Director Wheeler, for all your help on this. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. I believe we're on to the consent agenda, and if I'm correct, item B was pulled. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was anything else?
Nothing else was pulled.
Okay, so item B, request for approval to change the purpose of a previously approved budget amendment resolution in the total amount of $1,500,000 from moving from, I think it should say from moving, okay, we're moving it from one place, from moving land use staff move to the city-owned station condominium to moving information technology and telecommunications staff to the city-owned Market Station condominium. We don't have Sam Burnett. We have Tim Farrell here. And I don't know, Councilor Garcia, did you pull this? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Farrell, for being here this evening. If you can just give us an overview of what's going on here. I know the memo says moving IT to Market Street, land use, what's the deal with land use? Any context around conversations that were had? Because when this request was made to us last summer, there were strong advocates for land use moving over there. I'm very surprised now. Is land use still moving there? Give us the whole rundown, and that way I might help address some of the questions I have.
Thank you, Counselor, and understand the unsettling shift of departments to this location. As the Midtown Phase 1 horizontal redevelopment has matured and clarified, a glaring issue is the Mouton Hall ITT facility building that is now sitting directly in the way of a roadway. And also driving this is, in order to parcelize the north section, the phase one section. You can't parcelize a location with an occupied building. So this has really amplified the need for the ITT group to be relocated off of Midtown, which we thought we had more runway on in terms of timing. But in order to meet our phase one timing goals for roadway, stormwater, wastewater, which also flow directly through the Mouton Hall location, it puts us in a timing bind that prioritizes ITT as a need for relocation over a land use. While it would have been optimal to have land use moved to open up some space here, that story hasn't gone away, but we are not forced, but it's imperative that we have ITT moved as a priority to this location, which coincidentally works equally well with ITT's footprint and square footage needs. And it marries up well with the budget we have. So it's sort of feathered together our push to swap out IT for land use.
So thank you for that explanation. And so, Mr. Farrell, is land use sticking here in City Hall?
For the moment, yes. Our plan is to now focus and address short to midterm fixes and reallocations of some footprint for land use to optimize their use of their existing space while we re-identify a location for land use, if possible. It sort of shines the light and creates, our frustration with somewhat of a lack of swap out space for some of these divisions and departments.
Gotcha. Well, and this brings up a concern I brought up when we were allocating the money to land use, which, and I don't know if you might have the answer to this, but it goes along the line of having a long-term strategic plan in regards to housing City of Santa Fe employees.
Yep.
It shouldn't have come as a surprise that Midtown was moving along. We were in an exclusive negotiation agreement for that property, the neighboring property. So again, proper planning would have prevented us from allocating from one entity to the next. So I think my next question is, because it is referenced in the memo, a city service center, what's the plan for a city service center? Because again, the city does not have endless $1.5 million. I'd rather take $1.5 million to invest in Mr. Lopez's programming than continuously shift staff around, enter into leases without a long-term plan in place. I think that's the big missing piece that I just don't see for us as a city right now in regards to what is the long-term vision for our staffing housing needs. We're not going to be getting smaller. The work we're doing is much more ambitious, and it's going to require more staff. And I want to ensure that as we're moving forward, we're creating an environment that gets to, some of the topic we were mentioning earlier is a more accessible government for folks. And that's where the hopes of our city service center would have that front-facing service location. That way, a resident can just pop in off the street to the service center and get their needs met versus having to drive from one location to the next, to the next, to the next, and hoping that somebody's there to meet their needs. And I know this doesn't fall on your plate respectively, Mr. Farrell, but I think it all starts off with having that long-term plan in regards to where are people going to sit at the end of the day to get the work done on behalf of the people of Santa Fe. So,
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, for the question. We are also very excited about the possibility of a new city services center with a safe and accessible, modern council chambers where there are all the translation facilities that are needed, and visual aids for people to really access their government, comfortable chairs, lack of stairs, ability to get onto the dais for anybody of any type of ability. It's a really important undertaking. We have done some early assessments of it. It's an unfunded project at this moment. So we have done some space studies. How many seats are there? How many seats do we need? What type of seats do we need? What are potential locations, as we've mentioned before? The Sebringo Road is really nicely centrally located, but, are we really ready to abandon downtown as our city center? If we were going to stay here, we can't stay here. We have the multiple site solution. So there's really a lot of things to take a look at that the facilities team has been evaluating and putting together some options that we could meet with counselors and discuss sort of all the pieces that we're looking at this moment. One of the good, really upsides about this particular request is that ITT is not a public-facing entity. And so the accessibility and modern features of the new City Services Center, of a one-stop shop for our constituents, ITT probably wouldn't be there. They don't need to be in that highly accessible space. So land use, however, does. They would feature prominently at the front desk of any city services center. So this also is seen as a much better investment at this time in city-owned property for city staff where they can actually stay because they're not envisioned to be part of the city services center in the long run.
Gotcha. I appreciate that context, but I do want to make sure that we don't forget that even though ITT is not a public-facing service, it's an employee-facing service. And we want to ensure that it's accessible for employees as well, because, as somebody who has had to deal with tech issues, it is a bit challenging having to go to a different location to get your laptop fixed or swapped out or whatever it is. And it's that much easier for an employee to just go down the hall, so to speak. So we want to ensure that it's not only accessible to the public, but it's accessible to the user, so to speak. So
that's a great point. Thank you, Councilor Garcia. The square footage of that building is going to be something that we'll have to deal with. So we'll have to make some hard choices, but that's a great point to consider as we're making them.
well, and as we're having the conversation around Market Street, the build out of the infrastructure of the Boneyard, because we are constantly using that as a counter selling point that there's no infrastructure there. Well, let's build it. Let's really utilize that space. It's there. It's sitting vacant. Let's put it to good use. So
I think we'd love to do that. That would be a really great pressure relief valve. I think we have a price tag on that.
It would be, it's about 7,800 square feet at $100 per square foot as a rough industry standard number for
right.
outfitting that space. And it would bring utility to the space and long term, it would be, you're building a nest on the ground.
Right. Well, and it kind of gets back to one of the points I was trying to make. We need to have a plan, right? We need to say, well, we're going to build out this space by doing this. We want to build out a city service center by doing this. And then we understand the price tag, and then we start moving forward accordingly. So with that, no other questions. Thank you for the explanation for the shifting around. I don't know if land use is not happy about not being able to move to a new space, but yeah.
You're okay.
Actually, they're happier staying. And then, as Tim said, facilities will work with them to improve the space they have and make it really more functional.
Okay.
Especially
Because that was quite opposite. They were quite happy to want to move. That was my feeling when they came before us. So I just want to ensure that at the end of the day, we have spaces for our team members that are going to have high quality output that gets work done for the residents of Santa Fe, whether it's here, Midtown, Market Street, wherever it is, and preferably not rented out spaces. Preferably it's spaces that the city owns without us having to incur any lease
Understood.
resources. So with that, thank you, Mr. Farrell. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further conversation about this? Seeing none, can we get a roll call, please?
certainly, Madam Chair. Councilor Castro,
See.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. All right, matters from staff.
No matters from staff at this time.
Okay, matters from the committee. Counselor Castro.
Very quickly, on topic, I am having a town hall February 11th on complete streets and ADA. We will also have Santa Fe Trails available to answer questions about a little bit of changes in our transit plan and where we're going to be looking to the future. That'll be at the main library, 5 p.m.
Matters from the committee. Oh, I just did that. Matters from the chair. That's me. For Counselor Chavez. Our next meeting is January 17th. And with that, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.